Most people are working for a currency that is actively being redesigned by forces they do not yet understand. As we stand here in 2026, navigating the global market requires you to stop viewing money as a static pile and start seeing the financial system as a sophisticated machine powered by three relentless forces: fiscal policy, financial intermediation, and asset multiplication. Let us break down this mechanism together to see why your traditional savings plan might be failing you. We begin with taxes, the often misunderstood subscription fee for a functioning society.
While many people online vent their frustrations, with one viral post recently claiming that taxes are the invisible leak in a bucket we did not ask to carry, the strategic reality is that they are the friction in your engine. If you do not account for this friction, your net growth will always lag behind your gross performance. We must also address the velocity of capital through the banking system. Banks do not act as static storage. They function as a liquidity bridge, turning your idle cash into active social infrastructure.
Many netizens are currently debating whether the fractional reserve system is a house of cards, but in reality, it is more like a library where most books stay on the shelf until someone needs to learn. Finally, we have the engines of growth, where the variables of interest and time either serve as your landlord or your tenant. You might be wondering how these three forces interact to determine your actual purchasing power in today's economy.
Let us analyze the blueprint of this modern wealth machine and discover how to optimize for net velocity instead of just raw income. If you have spent any time scrolling through LinkedIn or checking the comment sections on Financial YouTube lately, you have likely seen a heated debate erupting over a single provocative phrase: taxes are just a subscription fee for a functioning society. One viral comment recently argued that this is nothing more than a polite euphemism for government overreach, while a counter-argument with thousands of likes suggested that you would not expect to use a gym or watch Netflix for free, so why expect infrastructure and safety to be any different?
We need to look past the emotional rhetoric and understand what a tax optimization expert sees: financial friction. Think of taxes as the inevitable resistance in your financial engine. If you do not account for this friction, your net growth will always be significantly lower than your gross performance, leaving you wondering where your wealth went. But beyond just being a fee, governments use this system as a steering tool to influence how we behave. Take the European Union's carbon tax as a prime example.
It is not just a revenue stream, it is a sophisticated price signal designed to force companies toward green energy by making the alternative too expensive to maintain. We also see a fascinating global spectrum when we compare different social contracts. On one end, you have the Nordic model, like in Denmark, where citizens pay a high premium in exchange for high collective stability and a robust social safety net.
On the opposite end, the United Arab Emirates has historically offered zero income tax, focusing instead on consumption and corporate levies to drive individual liquidity. You might be wondering which model is superior, but the real question is how you navigate the trade-off between individual gain and collective security. As we analyze these invisible leaks in our wealth, we must recognize that taxes are the price we pay for the environment we operate in, but they are also the primary force that determines the velocity of our remaining capital.
Now that we have looked at taxes as the friction in your financial engine, let us move directly into the heart of the machine, where the gears really start turning. You might think of a bank as a high-tech vault where your cash sits safely with your name on it, but that is a comforting fiction we need to dismantle. In reality, banks do not store your money, they deploy it. To understand this, we should look at the bank not as a safe, but as a grand library.
Imagine every dollar you deposit is a book you are placing on a shelf. In a functioning society, the librarian does not let those books gather dust. Instead, they act as a liquidity bridge, taking your idle stories and handing them to a business owner who needs to build a factory, or an entrepreneur who is ready to innovate. This is the essence of the fractional reserve system. It is a game of velocity where your capital is constantly in motion, moving from where it is quiet to where it is needed most.
But let us be honest, This system creates a tension that many of you are likely feeling right now. If you browse any financial forum today, you'll see netizens raising sharp questions. One popular comment recently asked, if the library is always empty because everyone is out reading the books, what happens when I want my book back right now? This is the skeptic's nightmare, the risk of a total systemic collapse.
They argue that if every depositor showed up at the front desk at the same time demanding their cash, the library would fall because the books simply are not there. It is a delicate balance between growth and stability. We have to ask ourselves, is this matchmaking role worth the inherent risk of a bank run? While the bank sees a bridge, the skeptic sees a house of cards. Yet without this velocity, your money would just sit there, slowly being eaten away by the invisible evaporation of inflation.
As we analyze this, you might wonder if your current strategy accounts for the fact that your bank is actually a crowded library where the doors are always swinging. We must understand that in the modern world, the movement of money is just as important as the money itself, even if that movement makes some people incredibly nervous. But even if your money is moving through this vast banking library we just discussed, there is a silent force at play that many of you in our community have frequently called the invisible thief of time.
I am talking about inflationary erosion, the literal evaporation of your hard-earned purchasing power. You might be wondering why this friction is so devastating. Imagine your wealth as a bucket of water. While you are trying to fill it through investments, the heat of the global market is constantly turning a portion of that liquid into steam before you can even use it. Let us look back at the strategic playbook used during China's period of rapid industrialization to understand this better.
They mastered a delicate balancing act, keeping inflation strictly controlled to ensure their exports remained incredibly competitive globally. At the same time, this managed inflation served as a subtle pressure to encourage domestic spending rather than letting capital sit idle. I recently saw a heated debate online where one netizen argued that inflation is just a hidden tax on the stagnant, while another countered that it is the necessary fuel for a growing machine.
Both are right in a sense.
In the world of high-level strategy, we must recognize that if the rate of evaporation is faster than your asset multiplication, you are not actually building wealth. You are simply running on a treadmill that is slowly moving backward.
Now, let's pivot directly into the actual engines of growth, where we transition from merely surviving to strategically thriving.
You see, interest is far more than a percentage on a screen. It is the rent you pay to use tomorrow's money today. Think about it. Are you the landlord or the tenant in your financial life? When you take on high-interest debt, you are effectively a tenant paying rent to a bank. But when you invest, you become the landlord, collecting rent from the global economy. I often see people on social media venting their frustrations about the cost of living, with one popular comment saying, "The math just doesn't add up for the average person anymore, because the system is rigged."
However, the math only fails if you ignore the momentum of compound interest. It is like a flywheel that is incredibly heavy to start, but eventually spins on its own power. This isn't just about saving pennies. It is about building an asset that generates its own gravity. In the world of strategy, you have to decide, will you keep paying for the privilege of using future capital, or will you let time work as your most dedicated employee to multiply your reach?
Building on our understanding of how capital moves, let us pivot to how these theories actually manifest on the global stage. We essentially see two dominant philosophies competing for the title of the most effective strategic framework. On one side, we have the United States model, which is designed almost entirely for the individual. It is a high-octane, high-reward environment fueled by a competitive, market-driven banking style.
In this system, your retirement is not a social guarantee. It is a personal project, managed through 401k plans and individual investment choices. Now compare that to the Nordic model, which we see in places like Denmark. These societies prioritize collective stability and social equity above all else. Instead of personal accounts, they lean heavily on massive state pension funds and highly regulated banking systems. You might be wondering, which one actually works better?
If you look at global forums, the debate is relentless. One netizen recently argued that the U.S. system is the only way to drive true global innovation, while a common counter-comment suggests that the Nordic subscription fee for society provides a level of peace and security that individual wealth simply cannot buy. But here is the reality that both systems must face: the inevitable cycle of boom and bust.
Think back to the 2008 financial crisis or the volatile post-pandemic corrections we have witnessed in the U.S. market. These moments are painful reminders that no system is immune to gravity. This is where a risk analyst would emphasize that your primary defense is not just picking a side, but practicing deep diversification.
Spreading your assets across stocks, bonds, and real estate is how you ensure that when one part of the global machine stalls, your entire portfolio does not collapse.
It is about building a defense that survives the corrections while you wait for the engine of time to do its work. Are you leaning too heavily on one single engine of growth? Or have you built a shield strong enough to withstand the next inevitable market shift? Now, let's turn to the strategic path forward. To truly master your wealth, you must stop obsessing over your gross income and start focusing on your net velocity.
Think of this as the actual speed of your wealth once the friction of taxes and inflation has been stripped away. We often see heated debates online regarding where to put money first, with one netizen poignantly asking, "How can I even think about the stock market when my credit card interest is suffocating me?" That person is onto something profound.
If your debt carries a 20% interest rate, every dollar you pay toward it is technically a guaranteed 20% return on your investment, which is double what the average market usually provides. From there, you must shift your mindset from being the tenant who pays rent on tomorrow's money to the landlord who collects it through asset multiplication. The secret isn't a one-time windfall, but automating your consistency.
By setting up a system where a portion of your income moves into an appreciating asset before you have the chance to spend it, you ensure that your financial engine runs on autopilot. Remember, in the world of high-level strategy, consistency beats intensity every single time. So let us reflect together on our own numbers. How are you currently balancing your rent-seeking investments against the invisible evaporation of inflation in your personal portfolio?